Hey everyone, welcome. We are questioning constructs, and I'm Rebecca, and this is,
What's going on, y'all? I'm John.
and we are super excited to bring you guys thoughts, questions, things to just chew on.
Constructs.
Constructs. I was trying to avoid saying that.
Don't
But it's
worry,
going
I
to be a
got
fun
you.
time,
I got
and
you.
we never know where this is going to lead, but we're going to have fun with it. I promise by the end, you will have questions and you will be questioning your constructs. We just don't know what constructs you will be questioning. So, John, you have something for us today.
Yeah. So first and foremost, this is episode number one for us. So this is kind of a big deal. This has been in the works for a little bit. Um, we've given this a couple of trial runs in the past, and just to kind of feel things out. And we think that we're gonna have a bit to say, and hopefully you all out there decide to chime in and have a lot to say yourselves. um, Today I kind of just wanted to bring to the table something that I've been chewing on for a little bit. This is actually something that you're going to be super familiar with. We haven't, or excuse me, rather I should say, you kind of inspired this in me, and we've talked about it a little bit, but I just wanted to talk about having my little dream box.
Yes.
Um, so, for those of you who don't know, do you kind of want to explain what a dream box is to start, and we can go from there?
Yeah. Okay, so I don't I don't think that by the time this comes out, you guys will have seen my other videos. I run another YouTube channel, and at the start of the year, you know how everyone does like the bucket list or the things I must do, like the New Year's resolution. So I follow another creator. I have another creator's planner, Lavender, if anyone follows her. And she has 100 items on the bucket list. And I had a thought one day, I'm like, why don't I gamify this? Why don't I make this exciting and fun? And I was looking at my last year's 100 items and realized I really didn't cross off any of them. And they're all things I was so excited to do. And so I'm like, this is unacceptable. So what I did was, all right, so I'm going to make this a game and I'm going to find a nice little container and I'm going to write down every single thing that I want to do. Uh doesn't matter what it is. Like it could be something that I wanted to experience, it could be a goal I have, it could be just something fun. Like making lavender ice cream just for the sake of making lavender ice cream. Whatever it was, I put it each one on like little bits of paper and then I put it in this container. And the rule behind it, and I actually maybe I'll let you talk about like what you found and how our experiences were similar with picking the container, but there is like something specific about it when you go to look for this container. But anyways, so you put them in the container. I'd pull out one slip a day, I'd make a little video of it, and the only rule is you have to take one action towards that goal or like little piece of paper. And I have found I have gotten so much closer to all of my goals doing this. And the cool thing about it is you're only taking like 15 minutes a day. I think the most I've ever spent was researching and I went down a rabbit hole and I spent 2 hours. But the most that I found that I spend a day is like 15 to 20 minutes. And it blows your mind because as you start doing this, you realize so many of your goals are way more achievable than you think. We build them up to be these big things in our head, and they're really not. And all it takes is like little tiny actions across the span of, a length of time to be able to really reach your goals and dreams. And I've had so much more fun this year than I ever have. So I'm going to pass it to you to talk about your experience. I'm sure you have an update for me, which I'm really excited
So,
to hear.
uh, unfortunately, sadly, no major updates on my end. Last I talked to you, I had told you I was going to put a focus this past weekend on finding my quote unquote dream box. Um, but instead, I chose to adopt a cat. Um, So I have my cat named Cat in my life, and she's kind of taken the forefront of my weekend. So I didn't get an opportunity to really explore and find what that box is. But one of the things that I realized while I was, doing everything that I'm doing, I just moved into a new apartment. I've got, a new companion. I've got a lot of new things on my plate, and trying to balance it all has been tough. So, while I'm thinking of all the things that I want to do, including find my dream box, it just felt like it would be something that got pushed off, and I didn't want to. I want to get started on this process. I really like this idea that you've kind of made into your own here in terms of gamifying the reaching your goals or stretching out towards your dreams. Um, and so, um, I really want this to be a concrete thing that I do. That said, I thought it would make for an interesting discussion. The idea of what our dream boxes are to ourselves and what they represent, just as a whole, because I guess I'm looking for a little more clarity on what I'm looking for, right? So I know personally, we had like a little bit of a discussion on this previously, but personally, I know that I um, am looking for uh, an open box. Um, I don't think I want something with a lid. I want something open, just because I kind of want, my thoughts and desires, in a sense, to kind of interact with the world around me, as kind of nonsensical as that sounds. I kind of want to be able to breathe it in. So I just want an open box. But there are a lot of qualities to a box, as simple as one can be, that, really make looking for a box sometimes difficult for me. It was a little easier for you. You knew what you wanted. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, and see, like, what was going on. How do you feel about it so far? Are there things that you would change, et cetera, et cetera? What it is that you are, what are the qualities of this thing that you like? So I guess
Yeah.
I feel like probably a good place to start is just tell us about finding your box. That's
Yeah,
such a
so
weird sentence. Holy
I
crap!
I feel like we're shopping for, like, coffins or something, like, "Tell me about your box."
That's one way to take it. Yes, that is
We've come full
all right.
circle.
So tell me about the dream box.
Yeah.
I don't even know that I like that. There are too
Oh my
many
god.
innuendos. All right, go ahead.
So, uh, for mine, I would say it's interesting because you and I both gravitated towards open boxes. Like, we both said, like, when I was looking for mine, I'm like, "I want these out in the open, like, I want them to breathe, like, they have life, like, they're things these are the important things in my life, or that, like, I want to accomplish, that I want to experience, that I want to engage with. They shouldn't be locked away like so much of our other stuff that we have in our house." So I think that's one interesting thing that I've noticed, uh, when I was first talking to you about this. The second thing is, I think talking to you, and I'd be curious to see if anyone else picks this up, what their experience is, but both of us also were talking about the type of box that it should be. Like, it shouldn't just be some ordinary box, it can't be a cardboard box, it can't, like, I mean, I guess it could if that's what you want, but there's something specific about the container that is connected to you as a person. And that's not a requirement, it's just something that I found interesting when I was talking to you without us having, like, talked about what type of container I picked, and you were saying the same things that I was. So, when I got my container, I just went to the store and it was one of those like I'll know it when I see it. And I was looking for a box, some sort of box, and I happened just to be in the plant section of Target or like the home decor
Of course, it
section
would be in
with the big
plants.
plants. Yeah. And I found like I just was walking by and I was like, that's it. And it's just this like woven basket. Actually, I could probably let me see if I can get it for
Yeah,
you.
if you got it, pull it up. I
Yeah, yeah,
definitely
yeah.
like. I don't
Let
think
me
I've
give
actually
me like 2
seen it.
seconds and I'll get it.
Yeah, do your thing. Do your thing. All right. So like I know this is kind of weird for like a day one topic. Like who like decides they want to talk about boxes, right? Such a weird
Everybody.
thing. But like that is what's on my mind right now. And so it's kind of like on the forefront of like my thought processes. Like I really want to get this done, but I also don't want to like continue going in without like any kind of intention as to what I'm looking
Yeah.
for. But
Yep. So this is my little box or like a
oh,
holding.
very nice, very nice.
Right? Oh, I don't think I've ever showed you this. But I
Mm-mm.
mean, the funny thing about this is like I'm so nature based, nature and just neutral earthy things. And so I
Ooh,
just like I didn't even see it. I just happened to glance at something out of the corner of my eye and I was like, that's it. And inside I just have like literally rippy bits. Oh,
yo, that is a lot. All right, how
I
many do you
know.
think you have in there?
Oh, uh I probably have like 200 things. And sometimes I'll
Holy,
add to it. The other thing about this when you do it for so long, because I've been doing this for
you
probably,
have,
I don't
don't
know,
you?
like 3 months, 3, 4 months, you'll find that the things that you put in there as like important, some of them are actually going to fall to the side. And when you pull them out, you're not going to have that excitement. You're going to be like, oh, okay. Like those are the ones that you then get rid of. We all make like New Year's resolutions or goals that we think we want, but this is also a really good tool to showcase like it should be exciting to pick something every day. And if you're not excited about it, if it doesn't resonate with you anymore, it just means you've done this enough to know what is truly important to you. So that's the other thing I
So
found. I'm
like
curious if you're going to find the
on
same thing.
on those days where you like pull something out and it's like it's one of those that you're not really interested in, do you pull another one or you just say, hey, this is a break?
I pull another one, but that's
Okay,
also a chance for me to evaluate why. Like is it
okay.
just oh, I have a good one for you that I remember. So, one of the ones I have in there is get my skydiving license. And I have went skydiving twice now. But the amount of time and effort it would take to get that license, and really the only thing I want out of it is to be able to jump for myself if there's something cool going on. Like you all, I don't know if you've seen those videos, but people will put like a trampoline in the sky or like a water slide, and they'll be like jumping or like diving off the slide. That looks really cool to me. But going through all of that just to have, or just to maintain me being able to jump by myself when I have done skydiving enough to go, okay, like I've kind of checked that off. I'm not as interested, or it could be that it's like the right goal, wrong time in my life at this point because I have way more other things that I'm more interested in.
First
So,
of all, crazy because in terms of things that I want to do, I don't know that that's on the list, but hey, more power to you. That's wild to me. Let alone just skydiving, because like I feel like skydiving I'll do once, but I'll do it once to say that I've done it, because the alternative, if I go and I do it and I don't get to say it again, there's a reason why. as, as morbid as that sounds. But like, it is what it is. But like that's also why like bungee jumping will never go in, because I feel like with a bungee rope, you'll drop down and then you'll bounce back up. And I'm like, the fear of falling, I think I could get over it. I probably can get over it multiple times, to be honest. But I would rather only have to deal with that feeling once and then be done, rather than have to deal with that, that up and down. And yeah, no, I don't think I'm a fan. But you've done bungee jumping, and that's pretty wild.
So
I think you're
here's
officially a thrill seeker.
well, so here's the other thing about the doing the goals and stuff. Eventually you'll get to a point where you're like, what else is there? And you'll start to do like crazier and crazier things. Like there are people that are thrill seekers, and part of me is
Mhm.
that, but not enough to go and like keep chasing things. It's more of like, oh, I've done this. Like, what's next? And you kind of sit there and you look and you're like, okay, well, Antarctica, like jumping in the ocean in Antarctica, like haven't done that before. Um, but the thing about, and I think it's really funny that you said that about skydiving, because if you remember when we went to Costa Rica and Z wanted to do zip lining and you're like, hell no. And we
That
convinced
was
you.
the
And
worst.
it's
You know what?
amazing. Guys,
Hold
the
on.
guys was
We have
we're
very
having
different recollections of this. I don't think you remember our instructor almost falling off when we're in the balcony of the trees in Costa Rica. When your instructor, he wasn't hooked up to the line. If he fell, that was it. Game over. He's done.
yeah, but he almost
And
fell, I'm pretty sure, because he was laughing at you going, "Ah!"
okay. Regardless of why, he almost fell. Like he almost died that day. And no, those trees were entirely too shaky. Listen, I'm down to try stuff. I'm down to go ahead and like, experience, weird, new, crazy things. For those of you who don't know, the trees in Costa Rica are enormous, right? It's a rainforest.
Yeah,
So it's not like you can see the ground when you're in the balconies of the tree. You don't see the ground. You see trees.
you see the
Like
back of your
that's
eyelids.
you listen. And so that was one of those times where it's like it was just terrifying. Oh my goodness. There were so many parts of that were terrifying because it wasn't just that, like, hey, we're on these very small platforms at the top of these trees, and the platforms themselves were very rickety, right? But we had like a group of like, what, 8 people that
Yeah.
were like all fitting onto one
Mhm,
small platform, plus like
mhm,
the instructors. And
mhm.
so, like, the instructors would then hook you up, and like, there was a portion where there was a free rope swing where you had to swing from one platform to another. Of course, you're like hooked up to a line, but you're still swinging. Just yeah, I don't know. It was crazy. That was
I just
Costa
I
Rica
was
was a
so I'm
time.
so glad we paid for the footage. I'm gonna have to dig that up because,
Bruh.
like, the guys were having, I think, more fun than we were just because they were messing with John the entire time, and they'd,
It
like,
was
pretend to let him go, and you
terrifying.
see John like, "No."
It was terrifying. But that wasn't even like the only time we came close to death on that trip either. Do you remember the lightning storms on the beach? How
I
all
still
the air
remember
got
what
sucked out and like it just became so dry and so quiet before
yeah,
lightning struck like right in front of us to the point where our cameras just turned off and were
yep,
like flashing and everything.
yep.
That was crazy.
Yeah,
We came close to death a couple of times.
you know what? That's so true. So, um I we were split up while the storm was rolling in, and I've
That's
been
right.
on yeah, like, I've been on beaches when it's been storming or, like, when storms are rolling in, and, like, usually you have a while. This was not the case. I remember walking down the beach and going, "The sky is purple. I've never seen a purple sky during a storm," and I'm, like, starting like, I'm walking back at this point to the resort, and I'm taking some pictures, and I'm, like, looking and looking, and I'm like, "There's nobody out here," and then it starts to rain, and I'm, like, picking up my pace because 'cause I'm like, "Okay, now it's getting a little weird," and then somehow, like, I saw John, and John's out there with his phone, like, taking pictures too, but the craziest part is, so we were right near, like, a gazebo, and sometimes I have like a sixth sense for when things are going to occur. And I had looked at, as I was turning to look at John and be like, we got to go. What John said was true. The air deadened. It got really
And
crisp and dry. But then all of a
yeah,
sudden, all the hair on my arm stood up. And I was like, crap,
all at
we are in
once.
a bad
It was
situation.
that's probably a once in a lifetime
Yeah.
experience for me. Like I've never had quite the same reaction to anything in
Hmm.
my life. It was like so. It was like a really interesting combination of like environmental factors as well as biological factors. Because like
Yeah.
my like the my sixth sense in a sense, right? And I don't
Hmm.
mean it in the same way that Rebecca does. I kind of mean it in um, like a cat hearing something loud and being ready to run. Like
Hmm.
everything was just like everything went to alert, like DEFCON 6,
Hmm.
and it was just man, I don't think I've experienced anything quite like that. Period.
There's
But yeah,
there's been only one other time in my life. That was the closest, no, the second closest I've been to lightning. But completely out in the open. Like, had it been another, like, 4 feet, one or both of us would have just been completely burned to a crisp.
yeah, that
But
that was
it's wild to look back on because, like, our cameras shut off and everything. Like, at that point, we were, like, also under the structure, but, like, was not, like, we had just enough time to be, like, get underneath the gazebo, and then it, like, happened. So thank God we didn't
yeah.
actually try anything more dumb and, like, run to the resort, which we could see, it was, like, right across the road. But the other time in my life, I think I've told you this story, but, I have 3 brothers, and at this point in my life, we were all younger, and my mom was driving us back to, the house, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like, it was just a normal storm, lightning struck, like, literally, I don't know if it was, like, a foot away or if it actually struck the tire of the car, but it was that close to our car, and all you saw was just white, like, almost encased, like, the front side and the left side of the car, and everyone was like,
I
"Whoa!" And, like, it was over there and done so fast.
I wonder if that rubber tires thing is true. Like, I wonder if people have like attached lightning rods to cars to see what happens. I'm
Ooh.
gonna look up videos of that because that sounds like pretty freaking crazy. Like the
Wild.
idea of just attaching a bunch of lightning rods in the middle of like a crazy storm to like a
Mhm,
truck and just driving it out into the middle. I wonder if you can even do that because like I mean, again, everybody says the rubber is supposed to ground you out, right? And you're
mhm.
touching ground,
Yeah,
literally touching ground, right?
yeah.
So technically, the lightning should pass through, but I mean, does it pass through you first or does it go like, because I mean, technically, you're ahead of ground on its way down, right? So, like, so what does the car explode? Like, what
Well, and
happens?
you know what I think though? Also to that point, like, how much is too much for the rubber? Is it like a half a strike, like a little
I
lightning
wonder,
bolt,
it's
or is
gotta
it like
melt
the
it.
big lightning
Like
bolt?
it's gotta melt it.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
I think.
okay, so super, we went super off topic here. So
Oh,
I'm gonna
oh,
I'm gonna rate us. Go ahead.
what so, I had one thing to say about bungee jumping versus skydiving. Actually, and this is actually a good for anyone who is, like, scared to try either. Um,
Yeah,
but you don't really feel anything with bungee jumping. As wild as that sounds, I when I did bungee jumping, if
is
you're
that because
doing it
you're
the
passed
traditional
out?
way, head first. Wait, what?
Is that because you're passed out
No.
from fear?
No.
Is
But
that
it
because
does,
blood is rushing to your head?
crazy, so it does. I think it does matter where you go to do it. The first time I bungee jumped was at Victoria Falls in Africa, and they literally I was the first one to go. First time ever bungee jumping, and they took towels and literally hand tied these towels to your legs, and I was like, "I'm gonna die. Like, this is
Bro,
it." And
First of all,
I was like,
jumping in
what,
Africa.
whatever, I'm just gonna do it. And then of course they attached the bungee cord, which the person who put on the trip and myself were standing to the side and we both were looking at it and we're like, so it might hold for all of us, but it looks a little worn. It held. But anyway, so with that
No.
one, with
Sorry.
that one,
Sorry.
speaking of
Hold
which,
on. You're not allowed to. Do not pass go. Do not pass go. All right. We're gonna stop. We're gonna go ahead and reverse. I need you to repeat. You said it looked a little worn, and you still went through with that? Come
yeah,
on, man. Like,
yeah. It's not like worn as in it looked unsafe, but it's
if
like,
that rope is not braying you,
but it's
yeah,
it's kind of like getting slightly used gear versus getting new gear, if that makes
yeah.
sense. Like,
I
but
wonder
okay,
actually. I
so
wonder like if it's better to have something that's like slightly used over new in these types of situations, because if it's new, it's untested, right? So
mm,
if there's some kind of like issue with the rope itself, it's not
yeah,
like anybody before you is going to figure that out.
right.
You know, so I wonder if there is something to that. But anyway, continue.
Actually, that is interesting. I wonder what their testing measures are for new bungee ropes
Yeah,
because, like, literally all it is it think of a rubber band and like thousands of like rubber bands in like a tube. It's
that's
kind of like
terrifying.
stretchy rubber bands. So, um, so I jump off. Like, speaking of like passing out because all the blood's rushing to your head, because of the way their system was set up, even though I had the perfect dive head first face down, um, it did pull more. And so I get pulled up, and the cool thing about that is, like, they only pull you halfway up, and then they clip you to the underside of the bridge, and then you have to clip your way from the bridge all the way back to land. So you're, like, you're, like, staring, you're like, "Wow, the river's nice." And you're
So,
like, "If I just unhooked the clips and fell backwards, that's it." Like,
I want to make it known that anytime we dive into a topic, I want to be diving in head
head
first, face
first.
down. Head first, face
Yes.
down is the way to go when diving into these topics. Um,
That should be our
which we're
slogan.
which we're kind of doing now with recording one. Um, okay, so boxes, right? I th- we
Hold
started
on,
with
hold on.
boxes. We ended with head first, face down.
Hold on. So wait, okay. Let me finish. So anyways, but speaking of passing out, like the blood I guess went to my eyes. And so I had like little red dots everywhere,
No, not the capillaries.
not the
Not the
capillaries. But
capillaries.
so the thing I learned is you actually don't feel anything with skydiving either. So you feel like
Hmm.
just the one moment where you get off the plane and you level into the air, you'll feel air rushing, but you won't get any drop sensation. It just is very peaceful because your eyes can't comprehend how fast you're falling. And so it's really just sitting and looking. And then by the time you're pulling the parachute, like then you're sitting and looking again. With bungee, you also don't feel anything because you're going head first. The only time you get that drop sensation is anything that you're doing feet first. And that's really wild to think about, but if
Oh,
anyone's like really scared to do bungee, it is way easier to do bungee than do like a canyon swing where your feet first because you will feel it the entire time.
I
And
didn't know that.
if you're
Interesting.
yeah, and if you're doing it, New Zealand is the place to go because one, they invented it, but two, talking when you said you were scared to do it like a second time, you feel it a little bit, but like not really on like on the bounce because like you've already kind of lost a lot of your momentum. So it just kind of feels like you're like slowly falling. But with New Zealand, they have like a little pulley tab to where you can right yourself up. So that way you're not coming up head with your head down. Africa, they didn't
Okay,
have that. So yeah. But boxes.
that's wild.
Head
Okay,
first into the box.
Listen, head first, face down. Um,
At first base.
so, um, couple questions, right?
Mm,
When we're talking about these, what you have written down on your pieces of paper, I think we've talked about some of them so far, some of the ideas so far that you have written on, which is things like, bungee jumping, skydiving, or excuse me, you said specifically you wanted to be able to teach a skydiving class. Is that, or
skydiving license. So just
get
you
your
can go up to
skydiving
an instructor
license?
level. Yeah, but it's more so you can jump by yourself. Or at least for me.
So, do you have copies of multiple ideas written down in your box, or is it just one?
It's just one. I mean, I have so many things in there, but it also the more things you have, the more variety. And I found that I would get so excited about doing this that I would start looking into other things that I had really wanted to do, even if
Mm.
the little piece of paper didn't come up. Um, so I just started to like really create momentum that way because it became an exciting, fun thing versus like all this effort to do this task. But I don't
So,
put multiples. Um, yeah.
do you? Um, I guess the question is, when you're looking at this as a tool, are you using it as a motivation tool, or is it a a tool of pleasure? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Both. So, have you read Atomic Habits?
No.
Okay. So, Atomic Habits, it's a pretty decent book and it's all about surprise surprise habits. Like how habits are formed, how you can break habits, what is the psychology behind habits. And a couple of the things in the book like when you want to form a habit for yourself, make it easy, make it um like pleasure centered when it comes to like the cue or like the process as well so that way you want it like the craving is there to do it. Um and so I think it's a little bit of both. I just how many times do we tell ourselves that something is important or that we want to do a goal and we don't actually take action and then it feels bad, right? So now we're just sitting in this like perpetual state of like you feel worse and worse, you beat yourself up more and more. And then like the goal, the thing that like was a thought process, a spark of an idea, an exciting thing, like there's none of that. And then you don't want to interact with it. Like there's some part of you that still might, depending on how important it is. But then it's like the effort to start like is so compounded that like it becomes this impossible task. So part of this was like, let me create excitement and thrill around this and passion so that I can then pour that into these goals and then it doesn't become this monotonous thing. Also let me make it manageable. Do 1% a day, small things stack. And so I created so much momentum just by doing this one small action that it like compounded in other areas of my life too. So it's a motivator, but it also is making sure that throughout the entire process of my goals, it's an enjoyable experience so that way I want to keep doing it again and again.
That kind of makes sense. I think like one of the things that you've heard me say, amongst our, kind of our time is, baby steps to giant strides, which, for any anime heads out there, amazing show. Loved it. That was freaking awesome. If you're into sports anime, check it out. But I love that phrase, baby steps to giant strides, kind of like identifying that idea that, just taking the little steps, add up, and then over time, they become these huge strides that you're not even realizing, because you, in your mind, are just taking another one of those baby steps. So I love that concept, which is part of the reason why I'm intrigued in trying this method. But it's also interesting, like the idea of differentiating it, um, from what we would normally consider a motivator, right? So like, for someone who wants to lose weight, losing weight is probably not something that you're going to write down on a piece of paper and put in there and then pull. Or you put like 10 copies of losing weight in this box, and then you pull with a higher chance of pulling that one. And that's the day you go to the gym, right? Like that doesn't make sense. And it kind of doesn't, work in this sense because it's not supposed to be at least by the way you're describing it, it's not supposed to be something that is like, hey, we're going to get motivated to do this thing that, we should be doing. It's more of the pleasure kind of center here where it's, I'm going to go ahead and pull this thing that I'm really excited to do. And under normal circumstances where we're kind of geared to try and plan out the whole trip in one big bite and sit down and say, hey, this Friday, I'm going to knock out this vacation. I'm going to plan it all out. Instead of doing that, we're kind of just taking small steps on this thing that we're already excited to do. So it's not like it's not the push, right? Whereas, somebody may create a habit for the push of going to the gym. Um,
But why not though? Like, let's talk about that because I feel like we also get stuck in there's only one way to do things. And what if there's a way to make exercise fun? So,
So I mean, it could be, but I guess that's why you know, it's not why I'm looking for clarification because really
mm,
I'm coming here wanting to kind of figure out what my box is going to look like so I can
yeah.
start looking for it. But in general, like I feel like this is a kind of a good discussion to have because I think you know, maybe it does include that, but based on how we've been speaking so far, it almost feels like it precludes some activities that should be things that are like normal responsibilities, right?
Mm,
Like eating, right? If you're having trouble eating, probably isn't something that's going in this box, right? But eating a luxury meal,
mhm.
right? Like eating at a five-star restaurant or a five-course dinner, right? Might be something that goes into the box, right? But those are two really big different ideas.
Yes, but also no. So I use my box for both, but I like how you called out a push versus a pull. So we don't really like we're pulling things out that we want to do, right? But
Okay.
I also have things in there that aren't really deconstructed yet. And they would be if I wasn't doing this um more of like a push myself to do it. So
Mm,
one of the things I had in there, because like let's back up. What is a goal? A goal isn't actually an end destination. A goal is a result. So a lot of times where people get confused is they will set a goal and then they'll expect that once they hit that goal, they're like, yes, I've made it. And then, it doesn't last very long. Why? Because a goal is actually an end result, which is why you hear people say work backwards from your goal. Because if you're doing the right process, you are going to hit your goal, your end result, anyways, and probably even get further. So it's all more about the process. So I do have I think I had one in there where it was uh have like a more lean toned body. It was something about like getting more healthy. I don't remember specifically what it was. But the reason why that wasn't necessarily like a deconstructed one, like making lavender ice cream, is the end result is what I want to like experiences is an end result that we want to actually interact with. But when it
okay.
comes to end results where you're wanting something less tangible, this is actually a really good practice for that because every time you pull it out, the focus is on thinking of a process or something that you could do positively towards that will get you that result. So for me, that one in my box started out as I was just going to walk every day. And then I was walking multiple times a day. But then here's one, that kinda goes around that. I wanted to run a mile in under 8 minutes. Okay, well, like, I want that accomplishment, but do I really like running that much? No. But when you gamify it, it makes it easier because then you start to have fun with figuring out, like, what actually feels good for you in that process.
So then
So
are you
mhm,
well, so I
yeah,
guess my follow-up to that is some of these activities are things that, or some of these goals, I should say, are things that okay, so bear with me because I'm kind of
mhm,
working through my thoughts on the fly here. When we're talking about these, I'm separating these into two different columns of ideas, right?
mhm,
There are things that we want to accomplish that we have to have consistency doing in order to accomplish them, right? I think that's true amongst all things,
mhm,
right? But on the other end, there are things that take um, less consistency and more push to get it done. An
mm,
example I think would be I want to snowboard, right? That's one type of thing, right? So I want the experience of going to snowboard. Well, if I'm doing just 5% of that goal that I pulled out of the box, right? I might look up the nearest mountain to me, right? The nearest mountain or the times of year, or I may look at the cost of purchasing. I may put money away into a certain account that is labeled for snowboarding, but I'm taking a step towards this identifiable goal, right? But then a competing thought is, well, what if that thing is I want to run a marathon? I want to run 13 miles. Well, that's a tougher one to have in the box because realistically you want to be running on a daily basis in order to work up to that marathon level. Certain tasks just take a certain level of dedication to them that I almost feel like are at odds with the idea of pulling one thing out of a box in a day. So how do you kind of interact with those ideas?
So let me ask you a question because there's something that's common for both of those. What do you think is needed to actually achieve either? Like, what do you have to do?
The thing.
Right, you have to take action. So,
Right.
what this process does, if we're going back to the habits, and I believe in Atomic Habits, like he talks about the process of how a habit is formed. So there's usually it's like cue, craving, something, and then reward. Or you would think that there would be a reward for doing said action. So what we're doing in anything in life, the more you can automate, the easier your time is,
Sure.
the easier you're gonna have with it. And
Right.
so what we're doing is we are automating action. So even though for the 13 miles or like running the marathon, you might want to run every day. But here's where we also go wrong without this is we try to run every day. We try to establish these habits and it's not fun. And it's not something we don't want to run every day. There's
Right.
probably another better way to get there. So this is not only automating the action portion, but it's putting such a positive craving and reinforcement around taking an action that it's
Mm.
going to compound and you're going to want to take more actions. So as
So
you start to do this and as you start to check off goals and as you start to like really enjoy yourself and have fun, you're that one for like running a marathon comes up, you're not going to think about it with the same mentality. You're not going to think about it as like, dang, now I have to run every day. Maybe it first starts out, and I'll tell you how mine went for the running a mile in under 8 minutes. I just started out going, you know what? Is there an easier way to run? Am I running the best I possibly can? what if I could just shave off time looking up the proper running form, which by the way, I was not even using. And I can't even tell you how much easier running got after that. The other thing I had already started doing is just trying to run with my mouth closed. I can run so much
Oh,
like
so
those yeah, but like
there's a
those 2
combination of.
simple tiny
Oh,
things.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Uh, but like those 2 simple tiny things are so easy. They do not require me running every single day to get incredible results. And I think my first week and just deploying those 2 strategies and practicing just like lifting, like putting my feet underneath me when I run, I was able to run an entire mile in like 10 minutes. I can't even tell you the any time when I've ran a mile that I've known of consistently and been totally fine and felt like I could run a second mile. So it's taking all of your efforts, your mentality about something, putting it all into the positive and what works for you. Because I think we form these plans in our head. Oh, so here's the other way that this works. Especially for those goals where it's like going to the gym. I need to be consistent. I have to do this every day. I have to build up to this. Do you? Because the other thing that this pulls out is if you are forcing yourself to only take one action for the day, what is the most valuable action that you can take? What is the most fun? Like what is your brain already just wondering and thinking about? And usually if you do it that way, you're going to get so much closer and eliminate any of those other like extra steps that we just love to put into things. You know, like is it really true that
So
we need to run a marathon or we need to run every day to be able to run a marathon?
I
I don't know.
think there's a couple of competing thoughts here, right?
Mhm.
I think the first thing that comes to mind, and I'll try to not meander on my ideas too long because I know we're getting close to time here, but um, so there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is I wonder if there's something to be said about the art of creating actionable goals, right? Because
Mm.
maybe it's not running a marathon, right? Maybe that's not what you write in there, but maybe it's make running fun, right? Like, and that feels like a stronger goal where I can bite off 10% of that and know I completed 10% of that and got closer to the thing. Because the other thing, and this is why I say they're competing thoughts, is one of the things you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation here was the idea of finding some of these dreams that we think we want to accomplish at the beginning, pulling it up, seeing it, and being like, man, I really don't want to do that. And then putting that off to the side. And so I know for me, like, I imagine if my goal was to run a marathon in my current condition, if I were to pull that tag, like I'd sit there and be like, dang, gotta run. And that would be one of those things that I would dread pulling for that day, right? And so, but if I were to say, hey, make running fun, right? And
Mhm.
then instead of me looking at it as to like how I'm gonna run, I'm engaging with it in such a way that it's causing me to ask the questions that you were asking,
Yep.
right? Which
Mhm.
is, how do I improve my form? Is
Mhm.
there a way, what's the thing that I can give myself at the end of this run that makes me feel good about what I did, right?
Mhm. Yep.
What's that thing that's going to like excite me further? So I wonder if there is part of the steps in doing this, and I know this is not like a fully like written out process yet, right? I don't think it's written out just yet. We're kind of you're kind of playing with the steps now. I wonder if part of this is understanding what goes into creating a goal, right?
Mm.
And that might be something that I consider. And to kind of tie it all back into the original question of like, what should I be looking for? I wonder if there's a way to, I guess, find something that's going to represent that in a sense. Like um the idea of taking those baby steps to giant strides, the idea of figuring out what like the right goals. Like I don't know what that in your mind, what is it like for you? You kind of tie your goals back to the earth, right? And that's kind of why it took
Mm,
that form for you. Is that right? Am I like
that's y that's interesting that you said it that way. So one of the things I was gonna comment on when you were talking is I do think creation of goals is an art form. But just like with
okay?
art, I don't think there's like one right way to do it. This is just like
Fair.
my career and what I have a passion for is like system and processes. And so I pick up on things that I don't think many other people pick up on. But what I will say is, I think making running fun, comparing making running fun to running a marathon, when you were talking about it, your energy, the way you presented it, like kind of like the excitement in your voice was so much more there for the make running fun than it was like about the marathon. And the thing about these goals is when you said like I'm kind of tying my dreams back to earth or like nature or like something that I very much am passionate about, you owe it to yourself to explore. Like that's what a lot of this is you're putting anything in there that has to do with like who you are at the core of your person. And so the more that you take those small steps to explore what you've put in there, the more clear you become on yourself, the more clear you become on what is actually important to you and what you value, and the more clear you become on how you want to get there. What does that look like for you? Me, I want my life to be fun. I want it to be the best life experience I've ever had because you only get one life. And but I do think there is something scientifically here that helps anybody, whether you really care to make them fun or not. Um, and so it's less about like if you started out with a goal of I want to run a marathon. Remember, there's no time limit to these. So, like, sometimes I've pulled goals and I go, I can't do anything else with this right now except for save up money. Or I've gone as far as I can with saving money, but now I'm waiting for the right moment to take the trip. So, like, and those are things you just have to realize. And when those moments come up, I just pull another one. But
Hmm.
there's no time limit. And if your goal changes, if you realize that running a marathon is not the end goal, what is it that drew you to that goal in the first place? Was it the freedom of running? Was it just feeling better about your physical appearance or your capabilities? Was it making friends and getting that hoorah at like and that praise at the end of the race? Like there is always something, even if we decide that the end goal isn't really for us anymore, refine it. So you already just did that. Instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, I want to make running fun. Because naturally when you make running fun, what happens? You wanna do it more, you're gonna engage with it more, and you're gonna get all those other benefits anyways. And then maybe in, like, a year from now, then you go, "You know what? I've been having so much fun with running, I do now wanna see what my time will be if I run a marathon." Or even maybe a step to running a marathon is you just run a 5K. Or I don't
It's
know if that's something I think
definitely
Amer yeah.
I think yeah. It's definitely interesting to like think about what does it mean to set a goal. And I kind of think that for right now, I mean, I need to figure out what kind of box I'm getting. That's where I'm at. I need to figure out what box I'm getting.
It's the first
So
exploration of
to
self.
to kind of bring it back there again, I'm wondering. Well, and this is more of like an out loud question for myself. Like, if I had to tie my identity to what I see in the world or what would want represented in the world, I wonder what that would be. Like for
Ooh.
you, you have like this concept of Earth, right? Which is why, like,
Mhm,
I keep going back to that idea. I know nature is really important to you. It
mhm.
makes sense. A woven a woven basket is probably good for you. I noticed that it's round, it's not cornered off, it's not like a square, right? These are
Yeah.
all identifiers that kind of point to, a personality trait that you may not be thinking of when you immediately see this thing that you pick up and say, hey,
Mhm.
I like this thing. But these are things from the outside that, like, as I start to analyze this question of, like, why is it important to me that this receptacle of ideas represents something in the world for me, right? And I think a big piece of this is because I really want to hone in on tying myself to the reality around me. I want to be able to
Ooh.
dictate it in a very specific kind of way that allows me to almost exert control, in a sense, and take control of the things that I feel like I have the opportunity to do, right?
Mhm.
Because everybody, may talk about doing crazy things like skydiving or going to Dubai or whatever it may be, right? But it's the people who do them who actually do them, right? The
Yeah.
people who exert that control over their reality that are
Mhm.
able to then go and do the thing, which is a simple statement. It's very true on the face of it, but it's also something that I think, we don't put a lot of intention into, oftentimes. And I think what I hope this process does for me personally is it allows me to be a lot more intentional with what I want out of life, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
when I think about that intention and how I want to direct it, that's part of the reason why this simple concept. I mean, on the face of it, a box is 5 sides, right? Like
Mhm.
that's all it is.
Mhm.
Minimum like 5 to 6 sides, right? And you got a box, right? 5 sides an open box, 6 sides a closed one, right? And
Yeah.
so such a simple concept. Those sides could be made up of anything. They could be made up of seashells. They could be made up of resin. They could be made up of any other type of plastic. It could be cardboard. It could be leaves. It could be any one of these types of things. So, in a world where we have the option to choose so much, everything is a click away now.
Mhm.
What is it that, you know, what is it that connects with you enough to choose? And I think that's kind of where I am, is like trying to figure out what is it that I'm gonna look at and be like, I'm gonna stick. Uh, hold on. So that is gonna sound awful when I say it. I've made
Yeah.
like so many innuendos today that, like, unintentionally, but I'm gonna make one more. This is my last one for my day. All right, I'm gonna stick my hand in it and be happy that I'm doing so. Right, like that's what I'm
Bravo.
looking for, is this thing that, like, I see it when I wake up, or I see it probably when
Mhm.
I wake up. And I'm like, hey, you know what? That thing right there, I cannot wait to take something out of that thing and put something else into the world,
Yep.
right? Like,
Mhm.
that's a fire feeling, and I want to capture
Mhm.
that in this receptacle.
Yeah.
So, like, as simple and as silly as it is to talk about a box for 45-50 minutes, like, I think that's kind of where I'm at and why I'm so, like, excited but also interested in this thing, this
Mhm.
concept, this idea, and why I have so many questions around it. um
It's
yeah.
interesting too. Um, it's gonna be it's a visual representation almost of your deepest wishes and desires. And so how are you okay with that visualization? How, like, what does that visualization look like to you? Like, if you were to put yourself as a box, like, what does it look like? And I think it's interesting too because when you're talking about putting things into the world, I think you're very much that person. You are very thoughtful. You are very driven to make an impact, driven to be connected. And it's cool to hear you talk like that because when I was first starting this, actually really like I did say it started from the bucket list, but what I realized is in looking at the list, I'm like, my number one value in life is shared memories and like shared experiences and just experiencing in general. I want to experience as much as possible in my life because I only get one life. And so it's interesting because, like the other thing that comes with that, like with this loose woven basket that's, doesn't have any edges and whatnot, it's just free flowing. It's free. And so like freedom and experience are two things at my core. And it's interesting because you are very like logical and you're talking about like the control aspect. Um, not control as in a controlling way, but just like having more control over your destiny. So I'm so fascinated by how your concept of yourself right now is going to show up in this visual representation of the box.
It's gonna be interesting, and you know what? It's gonna have five sides. It's gonna. Anyway, okay.
It's not
So
going to be a paper
let's
bag. No.
listen. Um, so let's go ahead and wrap things up here. I think
Yeah.
we are kind of at a good stopping point. And question I just want to put out there for the people, like in general, this conversation kind of went all over the place, but like really, like we're talking about a box. So if you feel like, hey, you guys are talking about boxes, then show up and say something about it, because that's perfectly fine too. But for those of you who are like, man, that's some weird thinking just over a box, show up and say something about that too. Like,
Yeah.
we want to
Also,
hear what you guys have to say.
and if you think that this is helpful, and are game to give it a go, like share pictures of your box. Um,
Actually, that's fire. Like, if anybody out there like somehow stumbles across this and is like, dang, I really want to start a box of my own. I'm really interested in seeing where some of those pieces of paper that you pull lead to. Like,
mm,
I think we're all kind of in this journey of, in a sense. And if that's the case, we've all got like this shared kind of reality, this space that we are all occupying. It'd be really interesting to see what you do with your space.
yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
All right, y'all.
thanks for
Well,
joining.
I think
Remember, jump into the box head first, face down when you do get
head
it.
first, face down. All right, y'all. Bye.
See you guys.